let's keep the things flowing from there. We move to, say, digital communications space now. So if I can ask Andy Noyce, Senior Lead Enterprise AE from Nylas, to come up and take us on a different path now around powerful digital communications. Andy.
I was going to say, do I get a round of applause? And it's Andy Noyce, not Joyce, but I'll forgive you for that. But to be honest, when I was, is this coming through okay? Sorry. To be honest, when I was asked to speak, I was quite excited about it being at Twickenham, and I thought, great, I've got a captive audience to bore about my journeyman rugby career, but then the company said you need to look at the subject that we're actually talking about. So we've gone from wind racers, which is very visible, high level, to we're going to talk about under the covers now. In terms of communications data, and by that I'm talking about email and calendar and access to that. So I'm never sure whether talking at the end of the day or the start of the day is the best place, but what was really pleasing to hear was the likes of DPD, Estee Lauder, Parcel Force talking about the things that we're talking about with our customers and with the other organisations like yourselves who have been talking to us about what we can enable for them. And from an overview, I'm pretty much guessing, if I just have a show of hands, who heard of Nylas before you came today? That's what I expected. Duncan, put your hand down, you work for me, for us. And there's a reason for that, because we're very much in the background, and so we're not front end, we're not an application, make it really clear, we're not application. You guys create your applications, you know, your DHL, DPD apps, FedEx apps, etc. We have an email, single email, calendar and contact API that can connect to all email service providers, so Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, you name them, it connects through one single point. Where we started was working with other software platforms who had some maybe workflow elements within their technology where users are coming out of the platform to go to email and update information which they actually wanted within their own platform, or going to calendar to book appointments and schedule appointments. And then organisations realised that via email connectivity, using Nylas, you could pass certain email information back into the platform, so to enrich workflow and things like that. It was actually this industry that approached us about our technology. Obviously, we were out there trying to sell our wares, and we had people from e-commerce, people from the carrier space coming to us saying, we've got a view on what we'd like to try and do, and we think your technology can help us. So it's really interesting to be here talking today because of who we're working with. A lot of these subjects have been covered already. I was really pleased to hear returns automation coming up, I think nearly in every session I sat in, which was 6 or 7, and how you can reduce the customer support queries and improve that customer experience. I think customer support queries is worth looking at as well because there's a cost associated to that. So one of our customers have looked at that in particular, at how they can reduce their own costs of the calls and queries going through if they can automate the returns process so consumers can look within their application and see the status of any returns and taking that email data and then pushing it through. Multi-carrier delivery tracking. So this is an interesting subject. So within an application, myself as a consumer, I want to be able to see everything in one place if I can, ultimately. We all have our apps, we all have our different usages. Actually, if I could have that online visibility to see everything in one place, that's very powerful, irrelevant of where the delivery is potentially coming from. Digital shipment experience, I mean, unifying the digital customer experience, minimizing paperwork, application things. Well, that's a given, isn't it? Very rare in this space of people actually having to maybe download documentation anymore, but it's a really important factor as well. And sorry, these are obviously subjects that have been covered, but I just wanted to make sure I'm giving some context around the types of use cases where our API is fitting in and providing value. With big focus on business to consumer, some of those great sessions earlier around delivering a great customer experience and how we can increase our consumer loyalty and how that filters back down to the merchants and the brands. Because obviously I think it was DPD, who said that obviously the carrier is an extension of the merchant. If there's a poor delivery experience, it does reflect on the brand or on the retailer and merchant itself as well. But there's also business to business. It says huge amounts of information is traveling via email. Yes, there's loads of other communication channels, and we deal with SMS and WhatsApp for business, but email is still very, very dominant, okay? And it's still really important to understand the value of the context-rich data that's within that. And sort of, again, another example of that is email, again, is going to be as real-time as maybe you can get. We talk about real-time information, and sometimes it means different things to different people. But if you can pull that information into your own application and domain to enrich the user experience, it's very powerful. But we were looking at, and sorry, I'm so not used to having one of these and quite as established a sort of show. But visibility is a massive thing from the post-purchase piece. And actually there's information within those business-to-business emails as well. And if people are having to go in and out of different domains, obviously it creates inefficiencies. Is there missed information? Can we enrich our services better? Another really big piece around it as well is that just-in-time intervention. So if there's a challenge in the delivery process, whether it's business-to-business or B2C, can we make sure that information is as visible as possible to the consumer or to the business as well? And one way to do that is to integrate this information. Now, I know a lot of people will talk about things like compliance, and it's really important to address the elephant in the room. So obviously our platform, our API is GDPR compliant, but you have to set the terms and conditions for a user to approve and accept that. And I'll give you some examples. So one of our customers we're working with, within 9 months, has got 2 million connected accounts with the users accepting that, because they're saying, actually, we want to connect to your email because we're going to pass in specific information. And it's specific information. They can't access anything else. And securely bring that in to enrich your experience, provide more personalized offerings. And this is an e-commerce platform. And that's only in 3 markets. So it's evolving very quickly. One of the uplifts from that is increased customer loyalty. They're remaining in the app. They're not going out of the app to check email, check calendar and things like that. But that's led to an increase in second, third, fourth purchases as well. So they can make more recommended personalized. Why I say that as well is I'm seeing from lots of conversations with carriers in particular is you're evolving your business model. What was right 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I know there were some comments about it hasn't changed massively. We had a big spike in things, but maybe that settled down. And now it's that innovation. How do we enrich that customer and consumer experience? So I was talking about Nylas and trying to give it some context into some of those use cases, but also there's some areas where we feel we can certainly help organisations like yourselves. So Nylas is not the application, it's your application. So it's your front end. Consumer doesn't know it's Nylas in the background, okay? We're just powering that connectivity. Universal connectivity, talked about shipment communications, the carrier service, and we've got communications intelligence as well. Buzzword that's been there for a long time around data and analytics is monetization of data. If I can get more insights on the consumer and I can analyze that and I can see what other services, it's really important not to take our word for that. Of course, I'm a salesperson, so you can expect me to say certain things. But some of our customers have done surveys with their customers before taking this approach. And in some instances, we've talked to people about it and said, look, go out there, ask your consumers, ask your customers, what's of value, what will add value to the service you provide. I think a couple of people were talking about offering a range of services to the consumer in terms of, obviously, talked about lockers, we talked about next day delivery, same hour. Myself as a consumer, I have an expectation of there now, and I sort of expect it to be hit, but I'm a different demographic to some other people. We've got a generation coming through who want everything at the touch of a button. I've got a 14-year-old boy. He's lazy as anything, so he wants life as simple as possible. I'm sure a lot of us can hopefully sympathise with me on that. My parents, a generation who just get confused by everything. And there's myself, who I'll accept certain things if I see the real value. I think it's important we learn from other industries as well and share certain information. So travel's a big one. If you think about connectivity with calendar, and I relate this to carriers, if myself says actually through an application, I'm not going to pick anyone in particular, says actually if we can connect to your calendar, we can check your schedule and see this is a recommended slot for delivery for between 1 and 2. The reason why that benefits myself is I travel a lot with work, or when I'm working from home, I'm on Zoom calls all day. We all know that pain since lockdown. But I actually don't want to be getting up and taking somebody from the door when I'm presenting to DPD or DHL or hopefully one of you again in future. So I want it even more personalised around that. Am I willing to pay a premium for that? I might be. There's obviously a generation who won't and want more for less. But there's different opportunities to offer different demographics, but you're only going to understand that by having that connectivity. So that goes back to data monetization and intelligence and understanding that. If I can pass this information with the approval, with the right authentication, I can get more insights. So this is just an example of what it could look like, okay? So when a user clicks on your application, you'll run through an authentication process, which basically says, we're going to gather this information, or we want to connect to your calendar to offer you this service. And they will say yes or no. And again, going back to demographics, there's people who just click yes, 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 and there's people who think about it more and people who say absolutely not. But that's all controlled, GDPR compliance and everything that you'd obviously expect. And we've been through a lot of reviews with security teams and legal teams to ensure that. And like I said, it was people who came to us and said, your technology can help us here. Upsell services, increase loyalty, look at different services we might be able to provide. And you can pull out they can pull out at any time as well. They have that obviously within the control. The team efficiency piece comes more business to business. How do we, if we've got partnership relationships and actually they use, if somebody's using a different platform and you've got multiple platforms and businesses are involved, if you can engage some of the communication, so emails are syncing automatically between different platforms, that will create some workflow efficiency. So there's always a gain to be had there. The deliveries and appointments is interesting, talking to some retailers about where they offer those slots. How can we actually just recommend a slot based on your previous patterns and behaviours? We see 9 times out of 10 we deliver to you at Friday at 5 o'clock, so we're going to offer you that slot, and there's probably a high chance that somebody's going to take that. I mentioned about learning from other industries, travel, for example, when you're booking flights. You've got British Airways app, EasyJet app, you've got Sky Scanner, etc. And you're scrolling through trying to book flights, but actually it says, based on your schedule, there's best flight at the best price is at 10 p.m. to get you to where you're going for 6 p.m. in the evening. I'm getting such a personalised service that actually, am I going to keep switching applications and looking elsewhere if there's not much of a price differentiator? I'm hoping this is making sense. The document piece is an interesting one. I think that's more business to business, but in some instances, actually, if we're sharing information through a consumer, so through our parsing capability, you can pass information and pull information out of documents as well, and they could be pushed through to an application, so somebody doesn't actually need to necessarily open a doc. This is in the weeds. It doesn't make much sense to me half the time, to be perfectly honest, but if you think about actually how do we create that single view of maybe all orders. So I've ordered something through Adidas. Actually, I've connected my email, so it's sent into a single application. It might be anybody's application for that matter, showing that I've got a delivery from Amazon. Looks like I've ordered you can tell it's American because it's an American football and a basketball rather than a football and a rugby ball, which I would have put. And then another order, and they're all in one place. So again, you're feeling you get an added value service. You might be making those purchases elsewhere. So really, just to summarise, and you'll probably be pleased it's relatively short and sweet, this one, because I think it is a very simple process, but it's understanding the value that it can drive for carriers and logistics. how it can also, we're talking about increasing carrier loyalty, how can we upsell services, how can we get a better understanding of our customer, how can we make sure we're giving the best value to our merchant partner, our brand partners as well. And by embedding some of those communications, we're starting to really sort of improve some of those services, which are already being improved and enhanced all over the place. I know that what I love to hear is innovation. Innovation doesn't just apply, obviously, to technology. It applies to services. It applies to how you're engaging with people. Like I said, I haven't got a funky drone to show you or anything quite as exciting as that, but this is under the covers and it's day-to-day part of everybody's lives. So again, we connect with every single email service provider, push that information through to your application or your website, whatever your consumer's using, and starting to really sort of generate those benefits from using that data to add value to your consumers. With 4 minutes left, I'm giving you a bit of time back, and hopefully that's not driven you to want to go to the bar too quickly. But myself and my colleagues, we're still around. I'm definitely going to the bar. It's Twickenham, it's rugby related, so I have to. But if you've got any other questions, please just come and grab us, and love to speak to some more of you. Thank you.